And some of them know more law about that one thing than I ever will, or than most attorneys do, because we don't cover one thing every single day. Probate real estate transactions. That's a very niche subject matter. And so you may be super aware of how all of that works, but then maybe the whole probate process is not as but us attorneys need to also step back and realize other people have very specific, very focused knowledge that we may not be that deep into, but it may be applicable in this situation to dig deep. And why are we going to go and spend a bunch of time and energy digging into that when somebody has already gone there and all we have to do is confirm? So we as attorneys need to listen to other professionals, even if they're not attorneys. Just because you're an attorney doesn't mean you know the law. And any attorney should know that. And so when you're in transactions with other professionals, I always like to be open to learning. Doesn't mean that they're always right, but there may be something that I'm not aware of. So
I really
think that's
like
something
that.
we should learn. We can all learn from each other.
I love that. I love that. And that is, I just love that you said that, because I have that philosophy, to have a little humility. We all have to have a little bit of humility and to be open. And the moment that we think we know it all, that's when we've really lost the plot, and I have found, and I try my best to have that humility, but I know I've experienced it's just a normal human experience where you realize you think you know what's going on, and then you get punched in the face and you're like, oh, wait a minute, I didn't know that so well. I've had that happen to me, at least.
Yeah. Oh, Mike Tyson says everybody comes into the ring with a plan until they get punched in the mouth.
Yeah. One of the interesting things that I've noticed, and actually one of the reasons why I started this podcast, Joseph, is that it's like, hey, I'm doing all these probate transactions, but I never talk to the attorneys, right? So I'm like, okay, I need to start talking to attorneys. So that's also one of the reasons kind of why I started the podcast as well. But it's interesting that attorneys, I found, they don't know a lot of what's going on with the real estate, what's happening with their client, with the property. So I was having this conversation with another attorney on the podcast that, the minute a filing happens, investors from all over the country descend on the person who filed. Okay. They're getting letters, they're getting text messages, they're getting calls. And what's happening is that they're getting inundated by all these messages about how to deal with the property, right? And I found that a lot of attorneys actually did not know that. They don't know that their client is getting absolutely bombarded most of the time with offers and things like that. One of the things that I try to do in my communication with people, that personal representatives, is to point out that these people that are contacting them, it's not that they're bad people. It's not that they're bad people. It's not that they're running a business. It is a legal business that they're running, but you have this personal representative they're a little bit in a vulnerable spot. If the executor is out of state or they're far from the property, that property can be a burden for them. It's something that they have to deal with. Maybe it's like, okay, there's a mortgage on the property, it has equity, and maybe they're using personal money to keep it floating until it's kind of figured out. There's all kinds of situations I've come across. And then the investor comes in and says, hey, look, I can buy this house cash, quick, no questions asked. You don't have to pay a realtor commission, which I'll get back to in a moment, right? Everything's fine. And it's like, the average person does not know a lot about real estate, right? In my experience, right? The average person has a very rudimentary knowledge of real estate. Homeowners tend to have a sense of value, but if you're not in the area, or you have not transacted a lot, you may not have a good sense of value and just the whole process in general. And so they'll hear something like no real estate commission. They go, there we go, I'm going to save some money, right? Of course, they're buying it, 40%, 50% below market value. So if you had my commission in there, my commission would be so tiny compared to the spread they're making on this. And I also point out to a lot of personal representatives that most of those people that are contacting them are actually not the end investor. They're wholesalers. They're just making a contract and then they're just flipping the contract. They have no intention to actually buy the property.